Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be another behind the scenes for the ancestral social critique. A lot of what I do on this channel is aesthetic in such a way that it defines what the channel is. The deliberate approach to the 13th century graphics is specific to being able to set the channel apart from everybody else on YouTube, but also to be able to demonstrate one of the more important factors of what my work is about. The stories I go through are important, and a lot of research and time goes into the scripting, building the script, researching the background stories, all of that componentry necessary to produce the Aesopica, the short little fable that is 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes 6 depending upon the topic. But in that 3 to 5 minute average window, countless hours of behind the scenes research go into that. That's before it ever gets to the computer processing stage or the components where I do use AI in actually helping to put this together. Now the irony of this is that AI is used as a transliteration tool, taking modern language and transliterating it back into a 13th century style, meaning the language is simplified, modern words are removed, and the behavioral patterns that the channel represents is explored in full. All of that research takes a good 3 days. The actual processing that AI does, that's roughly 100 different API calls, sometimes up to as much as 200, depending upon the script I am working on, and the difficulty of the imaging and transliteration. That all takes several hours by itself, and that is not the production of the video itself. The actual production of the video, putting all of that information together, that's done by a pure Python program by itself. No AI at that point. AI is only used in the imaging and transliteration process, converting modern to a pre-industrial era. The video processing by itself takes roughly 2 to 4 hours, the final Python component, as it builds the imaging and the video frame by frame to get the effect I want, the part that AI cannot do. The part that AI does do, the transliteration and the actual individual images, that is by itself another 4 hours. That's the part I want to explicitly talk about here, because that's the part that's critical to one of my major themes in my work. I've talked before on this channel about the significance of AI being involved in real-world situations. And throughout many of the videos that I've done, I talk about how my imaging systems have gone off the rails quite frequently. Sometimes you can even hear it in the synthesizer where certain words just don't get pronounced properly. But for the most part, most of my problems are in the imaging. But there's a parallel to that I want to expressly draw from, that I want to show and demonstrate as the greater part of my work. Even though my stories of modern day society retold in a pre-industrial survival component, where I simply try to ask the question of whether or not we're building a better tomorrow or rebuilding the failures of yesterday, there is a greater question, and that is, why are we putting these machines, these pieces of software, into life-critical situations? And I'm going to draw an express and deliberate parallel My software is state of the art. I use very expensive services in putting all of this together. And it takes 4 hours of 100 to 200 different calls to these different services to produce what I produce. And yet there is still mistakes. How much worse are those mistakes with self-driving vehicles of 4 tons or more moving down the highways and byways at 60 plus kilometers an hour when they only have microseconds to make a decision? That's the core emphasis I hope my mistakes illustrate. Please, by all means, tell me how many you find. Every time you see a person with their head backwards or their fingers out of shape or the proportions not correct, tell me, let me know. Because every time you highlight these mistakes, you help me highlight how dangerous this technology is in a life-critical situation without oversight. And that is one of the most important principles of why I do leave the mistakes in my videos. I want you to think about the fact that every time you get on the road, this thing could be driving next to you. And it isn't taking 4 hours to make a decision. It isn't backed by some of the best technology on the planet. It's backed by one system running in that vehicle that's only going to take a few microseconds to make a life or death decision. Tesla has already ran into that situation where they ended up having a judgment of $243 million against them, where the court found that the Tesla self-driving mode was 1/3 responsible for the death of a human being. That's one case that made it to court and into public scrutiny. How many more do we not know about because they quickly and quietly get settled out of court? Think about that long and hard every time you get on the road and you see a robo-taxi or a Tesla self-driving or a Cruise or any other vehicle with this technology. I spend 4 hours making multiple AI calls, trying to cross-check everything I do to produce one video, to try to get it right, and it still can't do it. Yet we are supposed to trust this technology at breakneck speeds, making life and death decisions in microseconds. Where does that make sense? Because quite frankly, as somebody who has worked with this technology in some capacity for the last 30 years, it makes my brain hurt thinking about that these machines are put in such situations. In fact, not that long ago, Business Insider did an interview with the Chicago police chief that said AI facial recognition was wrong 96% of the time. So people are being arrested falsely with a tool that is 96% wrong, and yet we allow it. How? Why? But getting back to my work, every video you watch, I hope the story resonates. I hope it connects in terms of whether or not we are building a better future. I hope the story, through the Esophaga, is able to bring some information through without a 3-hour dissertation or a boring, godforsaken classroom filled with umpteen tons of history. I hope that my 3 to 5 minute story can convey the importance of the ideal without draining you of your mental stamina that the actual original story had. But I hope that the mistakes you see help you understand just how unreliable this technology is and why it should never, under any circumstances, be used in a life-critical situation. It is a tool, and in the right cases, it is a wonderful tool, but it is not by any means something that can function without very clear and deliberate oversight, especially in terms of whether or not somebody should be arrested or on the basis of how that arrest should proceed. There should always be oversight. Always. The biggest parallel to this really is the Wizard of Oz. There's always somebody behind the curtain. Despite the fact that society wants to make that part disappear, that way they can't be held accountable for bad decisions. Don't let them. Somebody has to write the thing. Somebody has to start it. And somebody has to oversee it. This thing does not run by itself. Somebody is accountable. And it's up to us to make sure that accountability remains in force at all times. If there is a false arrest, and it is attributed to AI facial recognition, and I have covered multiple stories on my Patreon about that, demonstrating those false arrests. The process needs to be questioned. The people that just assumed the AI was correct and didn't actually investigate need to be held accountable. This is critical because if we just trust the machine to simply decide who is guilty, then everybody is guilty without due process. And that is really where this is heading. We need to keep control of our society in a meaningful way through accountability and responsibility. So as you watch my videos, as you observe my work, my research, if you find it fascinating, please subscribe, support, and share. The more people we can help understand that this tool has limits, and those limits are very critical, the safer we can manage this tool, and more specifically, the more responsible we can manage this tool to actually bring good to our society, not the kind of world nobody wants. Thank you for watching, and please share your thoughts. Let me know your comments. How do you feel AI is progressing currently? Is the hype over the top and ridiculous? Do you think it's doing more harm than good? The only way we're actually ever going to really solve these problems is by getting to the root of them. And most importantly, one of the biggest roots we need to really get to is market hype versus actual reality. The market wants us to believe we're living in the world of the Jetsons. We are very far from that. But that is for a whole different topic. Thank you, and have a good day.